I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey y'all, I'm Molly Barrows, and welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast, where we cover some of the most scandalous crimes and cases that bubble up right here in Northwest Florida and all over the place. Because as Pam Hill knows, our victims advocate and pharmacist, violent crime can happen anywhere to anyone, and so much of it is just devastating to folks, and we want to be there to be that platform for people who don't feel heard. And this is one of those cases that we're going to dive into today. This one comes out of Kentucky, from our neighbors to the north, and it's one that Pam's been following closely, watching the trial. This episode is called Don't Invite Jordan Henning to the Party. Killer husband's wife died over slip and slide. So this is just a tragic story all the way around. And before we get going good, we just want to remind you to please like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. But as we dive into these What the Feezy stories and this latest What the Feezy case, Pam, it just breaks my heart. This Jordan Henning tried for murdering his wife. It is caught on camera, and there's no question that he did it. He even admitted to doing it. He's a former U.S. Army service member, arrested and tried for killing his wife, Ashley. She was also a ranking officer in the Army. Shot her 4 times, again, on camera, reloaded, shot her again, on camera, and then he spit on her body. And Jordan Henning claimed he had an extreme emotional disturbance. That was his defense, which you can claim in Kentucky. So before we get into the results of the trial, we just want to talk about the evidence, because this is such an unbelievable case. It seems like it should be open and shut, but it was not.
Right. Oh, no way. Well, first let's talk about the people.
Yes.
Jordan and his wife, Ashley. They, like you said, they were both in the military. She was slightly higher ranked than he was. And he was, for all intents and purposes, a good neighbor. He would help people, bail out their basement if it flooded, help with their yard, or help dig a ditch or whatever. He was benevolent that way. And she was friendly and nice and everything. And this shooting happened on her 37th birthday.
Oh my gosh, that just breaks my heart. I know that's why we have the party favors here and the party hat, and her children were there, their neighbors were there. They weren't there when she was actually killed, but there were a lot that they witnessed that was leading up to this terrible event.
Right. Well, and she typically didn't celebrate her birthday. I think what we're going to find as we develop Jordan's personality, he has one image of the perfect soldier. He was great at his job. He had an image with the machismo and the square jaw and the strong body and the helpfulness. Military folks stick together typically. They have to learn a lot of things the rest of us that can live in the same house for 50 years don't have to learn. You make new friends, you become part of a group, and you enjoy each other's hospitality. I saw that when I was a little girl, when we had people in the military lived across the street from us. My family always liked entertaining, and every Friday night, they would play cards and come over and have dinner and stuff like that. Then it got bigger, because it's how they socialize, I think, with each other. So her friends were like, well, Ashley typically didn't like to have the party. Well, her friends, and she had some good friends. I'm going to have to tell you about one of the hotshot friends later, because she was a pistol ball.
We like her.
I love her. I want her in my life. Actually, I want to try to talk to her. So Ashley typically didn't have a birthday party. I think she couldn't count on Jordan to kick it through the uprights, he would say, because everything Jordan did with her was all about, let me get some sex from you.
Yuck.
That's how it was. I
mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. They are husband and wife. I'm happy for him. But it sounds, knowing what we know, it sounds like that's all he really cared about.
Right. Well, she had told her friends, this seems to be his modus operandi, because he would do what he needed to do. And then when that happened, when they were able to be intimate, then he'd go back. He's very controlling. He's very manipulative. He's very intimidating. And he kind of had, I've seen men like this, and in working in business, try to intimidate other grown men. Just right in front of God and everybody, embarrass them or what have you. Well, at the birthday party, her friends had brought everything. They had brought the hot dogs and hamburgers and the cupcakes and stuff, just kind of like a no-brainer. I love those kind of parties. Just throw them together. We're here together.
It's no pressure.
Right. And so she has a son named Carter. He's 8 years old. And there were some other kids there too. And at some point, a slip and slide came out for the party for the kids to enjoy. I mean, that's sort of like a no-brainer. They would all enjoy that. And Jordan, he liked to make mead. So I guess that's something to do with beer. And
yes, like people who like to make craft beer in their basement. Kind of thing.
All right. Well, he liked that. And his friends would come over and he would say, taste it, taste it. He's kind of pushy man, and they're like, we don't really want to taste it. Wasn't that good last time or whatever. Anyway, They're tasting it. The adults are drinking and all having a good time, eating, drinking, partying for her birthday. They even sing happy birthday to her. And you see her running around in the house. She looks so cute. She's got her little bib overalls on and running around the house just trying to make everybody happy. And they said she had the best laugh. So she's having a good time. And Jordan, he's having a good time too. But at some point,
they thought.
Right. Well, he gets drunk. And when they say when he gets drunk, he gets handsy and heavy handsy and like in your face. So to one of the other guys, I think something happened. Instead of just like patting him or how people do, they said when he put his hand on you, he would like kind of grab the back of your neck and kind of push your neck down a little bit, that heavy handedness.
Yes.
And so they said, but that's how he got when he was drunk. They were kind of okay with it. I don't think they liked it, but anyway.
They accepted it.
They accepted it, right. So the partying goes on and the folks go home. But before they go home, I mean, like I said, military people, you can't beat them as far as like, socializing and taking care of each other and all this is what I have seen. They ask, would you like for us to help put the slip and slide up? Because they help clean everything else up. And he goes, no, I'll get it, like that. So, but that turned into, I'm going to make Carter do it.
And Carter's her son.
Right, the 8-year-old. Because he's the one that wanted to slip and slide. He's just 8.
And these are not his children, right? These are hers by previous relationship.
Right, but he's their stepdad.
Right.
And
but it helps me to have a frame of mind.
Okay,
because if he's already got this attitude towards, got to show everybody what a big man he is, naturally it's going to extend to her children, I would imagine.
Well, and you're right, because it also bled over on, I'm going to make him tough because his dad's kind of a wuss.
Oh.
That kind of thing.
Oh, gosh. We need him to tell us what to do in life.
Right. And him being in charge of all this is exactly why this happened like this. So he kind of had a temper. He's kind of like a crybaby to me. I'm just like, stop all that whining. I don't know. Well, at some point, he's yelling at Carter, and Ashley's going, look, leave him alone. I'll do it. I'll take care of it. He said, no, he's going to do it. So he starts telling him to get down there. Carter can't get that off, can't get the hose pipe off. And Ashley can't either. So she calls for him. She says, Jordan. And he's downstairs fooling with his mead. And he's trying to get things to be sexual tonight. So he goes, tell me what you want me to do to help. I want to be helpful. She just told him what she needs.
Take the hose off.
Right.
Not complicated.
Right, but he's going to help her the way he's going to help her. I'm going to help you how I say.
So he can still be the guy in charge.
Right, still. So anyway, they get in a tussle back and forth over this. And Carter gets so scared because there's some screaming going on. And even Ashley goes, let go of him. So that means Carter. But at some point, this Jordan decides the story has something in there to where she grabbed him by the testicles and pulled him across the yard 10 feet and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't yell out, and he's tired of that. And he's a beaten down husband, and, that he's basically, what do you call it, the battered spouse.
Right. He's claiming he snapped.
Yeah, and he did not snap because there's so many things that he could have stopped many times. He did change his strategies. I will give him that. Right.
Well, it also sounds like a lot of this was caught on camera, like we talked about, the actual shooting itself, but some of it was not. And I guess to say that you're a battered spouse is a much easier claim of defense than to say, I'm just an SOB who likes to be large and in charge, and this day I lost my crap and I killed my wife.
Right,
you know, and that's kind of what it seems like it built up to this, and the fact that the little boy was there and then it happened in front of him, and that just hurts my heart so much. The fact that he's lost his mother and now he had to witness this to a certain extent.
Well, Carter runs out of the house. He runs across the street or next door to a guy named Jimmy Watt's house, and Jimmy had seen him scuffling with Ashley, and he tells him, get off of her. He's been told several things of how to help, but see, he's going to do it his way. And so Jimmy, he tells him, get off of her. So he goes back to his house, because what's his name? Jordan gets on top of him and puts him in a headlock and tells him, go home. This is none of your business. So he goes home. But at some point, Jordan decides that Jimmy's going home to get a gun. So he runs upstairs to get his gun, he says. And he said, I was hurrying so I could get back down here. And he spends 5 minutes upstairs, because Ashley had gone upstairs by then, just giving her hell, just, reading her the riot act of, you've got the neighbors involved now, and you've done this, and this is your fault. So Jimmy comes back over in the middle there. I don't think he comes in his yard. But Jordan gets mad at him and tells him to leave. Well, while this scuffle's going on, Ashley says, Jimmy, call 911. And that's where Jordan's gun was going to be on someone. And that phone that Jimmy had was more dangerous to Jordan than any gun, because he's fixing to be unmasked. His career's fixing to go down the drain. His image is blown. The charade, the Mr. Nice Guy, he knows it's going to go. So he just gets in some sort of way. He's already been building up to this all day long. He's been
and he's intoxicated,
right? And it's his house, and that's his wife, and that's his children, and they're going to do what he says. So at some point, with his fragile ego, he's just like a powder keg, but he's kind of just walking this out. He's terrorizing her. She is sitting in a chair in the kitchen, and he's standing over her telling her, oh, now you've done it. Basically, you've gone too far. You've got the neighbors involved. See, and that just did something to me, because that's what my sister's ex-husband told her when she told about the domestic violence in her home. He told my sister, my heart's beating too fast now, now you've done it. Now you've done it. You've gone too far.
The mask is slipped.
Right. So those threats like that people do, whether it's a man or a woman, because this Jordan, to me, is a reverse or a male version of Bree Coon, our other military person that shot her husband.
Yes, and for folks who aren't familiar, that's another episode that we covered, and you can find it. Bree Coon is a woman who killed her husband, and it was a similar situation. There had been allegations that she had been bossy, is what we called it in the title, bossy Bree Coon, basically bullied on a regular basis her husband and their children, but he wouldn't do what she wanted him to do, and she ended up shooting him in the back, and she was recently convicted of that murder. But it was a similar type situation in as much as he was a very nice guy by all accounts. Even after the episode came out, people were commenting on the YouTube version and also reaching out and letting us know how much they loved him and appreciated him and commenting on the episode on social media. So, and it's similar this situation too. People came out of the woodwork just saying how much they loved Ashley and how, what a good person she was and what a good friend. But that is certainly not the picture that Jordan wanted to paint. He wanted to paint her as some kind of an abuser, and he just snapped. But I couldn't believe a grown man would sit there and say, my wife grabbed me by my balls, basically, and dragged me across the yard. And we're supposed to believe you didn't holler, you who can't help but holler. Apparently, we don't even know him that well, but in this one incident, everybody talks about how much he's hollering, and whether it's at the kid or at the neighbors to drink the meat or whatever. He certainly isn't a guy that's afraid to express himself. Why would he keep silent then?
Because it's a lie.
And also, you're a trained military guy. You can't defend yourself without hurting her necessarily, or you can't extricate yourself from the situation. I agree with you. I mean, it just all sounds like crap, and it's just crazy to me.
Everything's Pinocchio Joe with this guy. He just lies. He's got diabetes. He can't help it. He just lies on everything. So this phone, in these situations of abuse where people are pretending to Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, which is exactly what the prosecutor called him. When the phone comes out, or when neighbors see it, or when you get exposed socially, that's worse than anything to their ego. Jimmy's got his phone, and that's when he gets extra mad at Ashley, saying, now they know everything, and you caused this, because I call this point right here where it happened, this is Dr. Shavnovsky with a Ben Brown double backflip. Because you're going to do what I say. The law is according to me. The story is how I tell it. And I don't care who I bring down in telling this story. And that's exactly what happened here.
He's going to do what he wants to do, regardless of who gets hurt, and
Right.
you're going to shove the story down everybody's throat.
Right. And so he did that. And so he's turned into like a tsunami. He's just rolling through everything. And so part of his defense.
Probably enjoying that testosterone rush.
Oh yeah. Well, he has some natural testosterone, but he also does have a prescription for testosterone also. So, when that part lights up, and I mean, also, I don't know how it feels to have to stay in fight or flight, fight all the time like people in the military have to do.
Mm-hmm.
But he is the exception. He's not the rule. Most people know how to behave and regulate and stuff. And here we are again with conflict resolution that people can't seem to handle.
I know. Well, and they were both in the military. They were both stationed at Fort Knox in Kentucky. She outranked him, but obviously they both had a lot to lose. So she clearly was concerned and fearful the way he was talking to her child, telling the neighbor to go call 911. She's sitting there in the chair, and we hear from her friends later on that she had endured lots of this in the past, but most of the time people didn't see it.
Right.
And it hurts my heart to think that anybody feels like they have to stay in a situation like that. But like you said, you have a lot to lose. They had their family together. He was a father to her children. They were both doing well in their careers. And even his superior officers came and testified that he seemed like a great guy in a lot of ways, that there were issues. He would complain about her regularly, which also reminded me of your former brother-in-law. In the reports that I read, he blamed his wife for why he hit on a 14-year-old girl. Because she, quote unquote, treated him like a child at home, which is easy to do when you are behaving like a child.
Exactly.
But at any rate, I feel like that is this poor me and, poor me mentality, poor mouthing himself at her expense. And then here he's the one that's armed. Nobody brought a gun to the birthday party. He's the one that brought the gun to the birthday party. He can say all he wants that he thought the neighbor was going next door to get a gun. But that's just something he made up to excuse what he wanted to do all along, which was pull out his other manly piece, if you will. If she wasn't going to do what he wanted in the lovemaking department, then he'll pull out the artificial one and put her in her place. I mean, that's the way it comes across to me. So there she is sitting in the chair. He's yelling at her. It's her fault. And he pulls the trigger. Right. And he shot her 4 times, twice in the heart. And then what's crazy to me, and you can see all this on the Google Nest Cam, which is basically a camera that comes on when there's activity or something happening. So all of this is on video. He shoots her 4 times while she's in the chair in the kitchen. He leaves the room, reloads the gun in another room, comes back, shoots her again. That's the 5th time. And then he spat on her body as he's leaving. So to me, if you're scared for your life, that's not somebody who's fearful. And then so it's like, which is it? Did she hurt your feelings out in the yard because she quote unquote grabbed you or didn't grab you, but you couldn't defend yourself? So then you can run upstairs and grab a gun because now you think the neighbor's going to get you. So you're just this weak guy that can't defend yourself. And now you got to go get a gun. And then she's the one that gets shot 5 times. And then he has to spit on her. I mean, that just doesn't strike me as somebody who's like had an emotional break. And that was what he was claiming, is that he was in extreme emotional distress, because the neighbors could hear it, right? I mean, he does this countdown and they're still outside. People know there's this, chaos happening. They can hear it, but they're not in the house necessarily. Right. So what was this countdown that he was doing?
It was something he kind of did all the time, because I guess it means something to people. It's like it's kind of putting you on notice. He didn't start at 30, but I think he meant to. It's like 28, 27, and at some point in there, he goes, this is going to end with someone dying, basically. And then he keeps counting down, and all of them are outside. They kind of know it's escalated, but he has pushed everybody away because he's going to own the situation. And where he had stopped to shoot her is he had gotten to 17, and he said, you fucking blamed me. Boom.
That doesn't sound like somebody who's emotionally broken to me. That sounds like somebody who's mad.
Right. Oh, he was mad because at 17, then he stops because she's telling him, if you're a man, put that gun down. And that made him mad for some reason. And it wasn't, I think her voice was shaking and quaking. I mean, he had her scared. He had her terrorized. That should have done it, if that's what he was going at. He was not going to stop until someone died. And see, with Carter getting the neighbors involved, that's what made him so mad. And this little boy, 8-year-old boy that just wanted to slip and slide, this is where his dad takes it to an 11 in a 10 world.
Yeah, it seems like that was just sitting there waiting to happen.
Yeah, I think he got jealous about the birthday party because I don't know why she didn't want to have a birthday party. People are different. Some people like them. I personally like having birthday parties and I like to give them. But if someone tells me they don't want one and I'm not a close friend to them, I wouldn't be giving them one. But that was her close friends. And they said she was happy about that, having the party. But I think he got jealous and didn't like her friends being over there.
Yeah, well, that makes sense considering what we think about his personality. But it's interesting that a jury took a lot of this information and they processed it in a different way. So he was charged with intentional murder, and prosecutors argued that he had, quote unquote, harbored hatred in his heart for her over their strained relationship, because as Pam was saying, that was exactly his reason, that they had this strained relationship, that she was abusive to him, that he was just this battered spouse type scenario. But that's not at all what her friends were saying. And I thought it was interesting. One of her friends said something like he's the kind of guy that kept a list of people that he wanted to get in the event of an apocalypse.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's wanting to take out.
He has a top 10 list. He has tactics that he'll use to control, tactics he uses to manipulate. And he's always thinking like that. Because after he shot her, he gets in his car and he drives away. And they catch him about a mile away from his house. And he had thrown the gun out the window because he wanted these big men with the gun to know he's no threat to them, but he just was a threat to a little lady there. But they get him out of the car, it's a felony stop, get out, back up, all this kind of stuff. And he's doing all that. Then he gets in the back seat of the car and he's banging his head on the cage there and saying, I'm sorry, just shoot me, just kill me. Killed the only woman I loved, all this blah, blah, blah talk.
It's a lot what Randy did, too, like banging his head against the wall in the Sharon's case as well.
Right. And he's handcuffed and he's like, I'm sorry, I threw the gun out. And, and they're going, he's basically saying, I just want to die. And they're like, trying to talk to him, tell us what happened. And then he starts all this, like, basically, she never respected me, she abused me, and going on and on and on. And all that's on camera, too. But see, what I find interesting about the video in their house, he put that video in his house, so he put it there. There's 2 separate ones, and it's on a Nest video, and he had to know it was there. He didn't care. He didn't care if he hurt the little boy. Can you imagine starting a fight over a slip and slide after your wife just had a wonderful birthday party and you had friends over and stuff? Because the little boy couldn't go out there and be a 25-year-old man and open up the hose pipe to do the slip and slide, he lost his damn mind.
Yeah, I know. And I don't believe that he, quote unquote, just broke over years of abuse. And it's just crazy to me that people would necessarily feel sorry for him.
Well, he had said other stuff like, she threw a remote control at me one time. Well, you killed her one time.
Right.
And then she
could have left.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, you could block it. I mean, I've had things thrown at me like that. I played sports, just whatever.
Yeah.
But he said, also, she bit the palm of my hand. Well, how do you bite one's hand? They have to have it across your mouth, right? Not like she bit him in the back or the elbow or the ear or like Mike Tyson. He had to have his hand across her mouth. And so he's crying about all that. But his lawyer, there's all kind of extra stuff in here. His lawyer's kind of a crybaby too, but he was there going, in his talking and stuff, he would say, this was drip, 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 like she was just causing problems for him all the time. Drip, 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 drip. Well, one of these lawyers, he has 2, was a crybaby. He called back to the judge and said, I want a mistrial. And he's like, why? He said, well, somebody on Facebook wrote I was a racist. And the judge basically tells him, wah, stop all that. And he says, whoop-de-doo type of thing. But all this lawyer, he's one of those old-timey ones, and he's like, this is cockamamie. This is poppycock. That's why I got this poppycock here. If I don't hear poppycock again, I could care less, But he's just one of those kind of colorful characters. But what he did might have worked a little bit.
Planted it in their mind. So this is a 12-person jury, and everyone on there is white. And we do need to mention Ashley is black, and her husband, Jordan, is white. So there is this perception that perhaps it was a jury of his peers, but it certainly wasn't a jury of her peers.
Right. And that's what we have to think about, too. People say, well, the jury of his peers it's not the same as her peers, you know. And so what had happened, they also said, and I might just color while I'm talking to you to see how wonderful this is. They said that some people were doing things, you know, coloring, playing on their phone in the jury and stuff. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know that's happened around here.
Well, it's interesting because with all that going on, when it came time to read the verdict, the jury found him guilty of a lesser charge, first-degree manslaughter. And so basically that defense that he tried to use, that extreme emotional disturbance, that is allowed in Kentucky to give you a downgrade from first-degree murder. So basically he was like, I just broke, I had an emotional snap. And, you know, I guess hats off to the defense for convincing this all-white jury that he was just some poor, pitiful man who didn't know how to stand up for himself until he got a gun and killed his unarmed, defenseless wife in front of their friends and family, or at least where they could hear. But yeah, and the verdict has just had ripple effects across the country, really, not just with her friends and family, but with people who feel like this was a racist verdict, that in essence, that people just don't value the life of a Black woman. And I think there might be something to that. You know, I did a little research, and there are numerous studies that show that people just, in general, see Black women as in less need of protection, more knowledgeable about sex, more independent. And this is the results of a test that came out of Georgetown Law Center. They're basically viewed as less innocent and more adult-like. So, and that's just talking about Black girls. You can imagine how that would transfer to Black women. And then they also said that Black women are much more likely to be victims of violent crime and much less likely to actually report it because people don't value their voice. They don't value what they bring to the table. And it's not just, you know, Black women. It's also other individuals that fall into different minority groups as well. But it breaks my heart to think that there's like an inherent bias that somebody might have that just immediately says your life isn't worth as much, or I feel sorry for this man because I can identify with this white man. I can't identify with a Black woman who's been shot to death. Right.
It's so unfortunate and so sad. That is so sad, but I know a lot of that is true or can
on
be
top
proven.
of domestic violence in the military, you know, they've said that that's actually gone down in recent years. I was looking into that too, but it is still an ongoing problem, just like it is anywhere you go. But they also say that it's probably a much bigger problem than anybody knows because they're less likely to report it.
And well, thank God for like his neighbors, you know, Jimmy, Jason, Brandon, and her friend Jamie. When she was testifying, she's a guardian ad litem, and so she knows court a little bit. And you could tell she was going in there with the heaviest heart and wanting the facts done because she was friends with Jordan too, and she was a spicy thing, and she was, you know, combative and, as they call, hostile witness, I think. But so what they were trying to do was extrapolate her personality onto Ashley, going, well, since that's your friend, she probably acted like you too. We might believe him. And she said, no, back that up for a minute. She said, I am more like him. Talking about him. She said, we get each other. I'm like him. He even told me we're both hard. Everybody else is soft around here, you know. So she came up with all that, and she's the one that got that defense attorney, you know, stirred up. But I almost think people felt sorry for him because he was big before, you know, he was doing testosterone. His bigger shoulders, like I said, the square jaw, and he's sitting there, he's in his old jacket is too big, you know, and his face is more like a Valentine. And so I'm like, I bet they're just looking at that because he was mousy and he cried and he did everything.
They felt sorry for him.
Yep, they felt sorry for him. And we would still be in that jury room. If I was on that jury, we would still be sitting there.
Yeah, I don't blame you, Pam. Well, it's interesting, too, that his friends and colleagues got there and testified that he was always complaining of a lack of intimacy in their relationship, but they never thought it would result in violence. And I thought, well, that's the mask he wanted y'all to see. But he still wanted the sympathy. Oh, she's not giving it to me now. Oh, poor me. You know, oh, poor me. But yet he's the one that's really trying to control and push and bully from behind the scenes.
Right. Well, he did. And he did it so much that it'll have a lasting effect on his children and the friends and everybody else. Carter, the 8-year-old at Ashley's funeral, he couldn't hardly go in the room with the casket. But when he went in there, he kind of fell on his mama and said he thought it was his fault.
Oh, bless his little heart. That just hurts my heart because he made it seem like that, Jordan did. Screaming at the kid over the slip and slide, making such a big fuss about it. Any normal mother, of course, is going to come to the defense of her son. And that none of that was his fault, and certainly not hers. That was nobody but Jordan Henning's fault. And I am so sorry that the jury didn't feel stronger, because how long is he going to stay in prison?
Well, they went back to deliberate after they heard victim impact statements and stuff. And they came back and they gave him the most time they could give him, which was 20 years. But that's nothing compared to life in prison like Bree Coon got, and rightfully so.
Right. Well, at least he has to serve 85% of the sentence. So that's better than, being able to start petitioning for parole within a few years.
Right.
But it's still so disappointing. It should have been life in prison, in my opinion, because he's taken her life, and her children will never have their mother again.
Right. There's no winner in this. And I mean, then people might say, well, somebody needed to step up. 3 neighbors tried. These men came back after they heard the shots, came back. They're the ones that rendered aid to Ashley. It wasn't helpful because she was dead. He shot her in the heart a couple of times. But, they tried, and it's on their brains forever. And look, Jordan scarred everybody. He didn't just kill Ashley. He killed a neighborhood. He killed an organization. He killed children's innocence. It's just like what happened with my sister Sharon. It just goes on and on and on. And I can tell you from experience, nobody ever forgets it. It dulls over time, but still, you go back to the worst trauma you've ever had and relive it.
I know. And then it's even doubly traumatizing when the jury doesn't validate what you've seen. These children have lost their mother, and this jury's like, yeah, but we can kind of understand where he's coming from. Whether they intended to send that message or not, that's exactly what they did. And I just really took it to heart. It broke my heart when I was reading about these studies about how some people perceive Black women, and they said Black women and girls and non-binary people are seldom seen as victims. The study said instead they are seen as deserving of harm or unable to be harmed. So in other words, we don't humanize them. We're not seeing them as people that are like us. We see them as stereotypes, or we've placed some sort of belief system on them that they didn't do anything to deserve. And that's what hurts my heart for these kids. They've got to grow up knowing that this guy's at the most going to serve 85% of his 20-year sentence, and then he could be out again whining to the next person about why he's the victim.
Right. And that's exactly what people said. They blamed the prosecutor, but the prosecutor was so good. I mean, he was a wonderful attorney, but they said they didn't humanize Ashley enough and make her like they did with him. Oh, poor pitiful him. Look how small he is now, and he's crying and all this kind of stuff, and where he grew up and things like that. But she has a cousin that is in the military, in the Marine Corps. He's a big, nice-looking guy, and he's been in the Marine Corps 22 years. In his victim impact statement, and he was dressed right. He was up there as military as he could be. He looked right at the jury, and he said, I have served 22 years in this country, and I've been deployed. It was 6, 7, or 8. I can't remember. And he looked at the jury and called them all cowards.
Good for him. And I don't blame him.
He said, and basically, when he was interviewed later, he probably had a more calm mind. He said, how can you watch the video and watch him shoot her, and he walks back through just so calmly to reload and do it again? How is that not first-degree murder?
I completely agree. And I think I agree with her friend, too, Holly Victorino, who said, quote, had the tables been turned and she killed her white husband, she would have been held accountable and done much more time than 20 years. I just feel like this whole entire court system failed her, end quote.
Right. So this isn't over. I mean, there's not a lot. We do have the jury system, and it is the best in the world. But, sometimes we have to think about even the best things can do better. That's where jury nullification comes from. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but it is a way to send a message sometimes. And that the way that we got to have jurors paying attention. You can't be doing crossword puzzles. You can't be playing on your phone. If you need to do all that, beg off of jury duty.
I do wonder if there isn't going to be some law or rule that's passed that keeps jurors from having their phone with them, because that seems like it's too much of a distraction.
It does. Or either give it to the bailiff. When I served, the last time I served, I seem to remember only being able to carry a few mints in there, a cough drop, your pad stays in your seat and your pencil there. And I think that's how it should be. I don't think we should have you're not there on a vacation or resort or to see if you can multitask. You are supposed to be listening.
Right. I know. It's an interesting world that we live in. You can't help but think that people too, they see so many trials covered on television that maybe they even think that they're in a show as opposed to actually dealing with somebody's real life.
Right. Well, this was quite a show, I'll tell you that. And the ones that you do see on TV are quite the show. And people being people, we're going to show people what we can and can't do.
Absolutely. Well, my heart goes out to Ashley Henning and her friends and family, and I certainly do hope that if they ever want to talk, we'd be glad to listen.
Yes, definitely. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate you joining us for this episode, and we appreciate you watching as well. That is it for this episode. Don't invite Jordan Henning to the party. Killer husband's wife died over slip and slide. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Broy. And remember, you can listen to more of our Gulf Coast Confidential conversations wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And you can also watch on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel. Just don't forget to like and subscribe, y'all. And we'll see you next time.